Welcome everyone to Bet What Happens Live. We are live at halftime of the Super Bowl right now. The San Francisco 49ers lead the Kansas City Chiefs by a score of 10-3. I'm Nick Giffen, predictive analyst here at Action Network. Alongside of me, my fellow predictive analytics crew member, Billy Ward. Billy, happy Super Bowl Sunday to you. What do you think of the game so far?
Yeah, kind of a weird one in terms of the lack of offense, especially early on. I'm coming away after that final series for the Chiefs there, and maybe this is just the jilted Lions fan in me, but I wonder if that lack of aggression down there deep into the red zone is going to cost Kansas City. Not only kicking the field goal, you kind of had to from the 10,
Mhm.
but the handoff, short pass, sack on, a fairly non-aggressive play, and then the field goal there. Don't
Yeah.
love to see that from Kansas City. Wish they were attacking a little bit more, especially down 10. But as we're going to talk about with a lot of these, they do get the ball to start the third quarter, so that might be part of it.
Yeah, getting the ball to start the third quarter is certainly a big part of our process because we have a live betting model. For those of you that are new to Bet What Happens Live, welcome. And what Billy and I are going to do here is we're going to use my in-game player prop model to live bet the Super Bowl. So our last chance to bet the NFL this year. I'm excited for it, Billy. So with that said, where are you looking at potentially for some live bets? Our first live bets at halftime of the Super Bowl.
Yeah, the first one I think for me is just looking at the live over. I said in my pregame write-up of this one that a close game favors the over, and
Mhm.
technically the 7-point lead is not, it doesn't fall within mathematically the close game that I'm looking at. But when the team that's down 7 gets the ball to start, that's more or less what we're looking for.
Yeah.
And both teams moved the ball so much better than the scoreboard would indicate, right? Like Kansas City is averaging almost 6 yards per play. San Francisco a little over 6. It's just the two fumbles, one from each team, and then where those fumbles happened was obviously an opportune for points. And even Kansas City settling for a field goal there, the expected points on that is obviously higher than 3 when you get that deep. So over 35.5 is the best one I'm seeing. There's some 36.5. I would
Yeah.
definitely take the over 35.5. Don't love it because Kansas City has been so good defensively in the third quarters of
Yeah.
games, but something's got to give here. These teams are going to attack. They've
Billy,
got
there's
Trick News on
also
each of these.
there's also the potential for overtime in this one. We're at a
Yeah.
7-point game here. And I was on overtime from the start. So I'm gonna roll with you. I'm going the live over. We're taking over 35.5 as our first bet here on Bet What Happens Live. We are taking the live over. I see 35.5 at FanDuel. You can get that at -113 odds at FanDuel. So make sure you're always shopping around if you can for the best line. And we're gonna have a little bit of an extended show here because we got a halftime show that's going on over there, literally right outside my backyard, actually, because I do live in Las Vegas. But Billy, our first bet for Bet What Happens Live on the Super Bowl is over 35.5. But we got this player prop model. Let's dig in. Where are you looking?
Yeah, I mean, I think the obvious here is we're looking at San Francisco to continue running the ball a lot. Christian McCaffrey only 33 yards at halftime.
Mhm.
So I think that's a good place to start. But even some, secondary and tertiary players, we've already got some rushes or 2 rushes for Debo for a total of -1 yards. Elijah Mitchell already has 2 rushes. If we think this game gets a little bit longer, could
Yeah.
see more Mitchell. So I don't know the best way to approach it, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts on it. But I think we got to have some kind of San Francisco rushing over, because even if Kansas City marches down and ties it, they're still going to be aggressive on the run more so than wanting to throw it.
Yeah, you make a great point. So I'm looking at Christian McCaffrey. His live yardage prop, at least at FanDuel, is 79.5. I'm
Yeah.
literally at 51% to the under, 49% to the over with my live model. So no value there. And Elijah Mitchell, I'm literally 49% to the under, 51% to the over. So we're right in line with the market. And San Francisco does not start with the ball. So it wouldn't really favor an over on either of those rushing props, unfortunately.
The one that actually jumps out to me, I'm looking over at DraftKings.
Mhm.
Debo is set at 4.5, and I know it's kind of hard to project, but they gave him 2 first half carries. They like handing him the ball. They want to get him the ball, but take less chances. Especially with a lead, you'd think there's
Yeah.
going to be more of that. And he's explosive enough. He just needs one. Obviously, his 2 yards so far have gotten him a net total of -1 yards. but all he has to get is, one slightly down the field. That's the one I
Yeah,
think
so
impacts
we're
the most.
projecting him for 1.2 rushes rest of game, and his yards per carry is 5.3. So, that's his average yards per carry. His median is probably around 5. He has -1 right now. So I'd put him at 4 as a median, and 4.5 is the line. So
Three
again,
and
we're
a
like
half at
right
FanDuel.
there. 3.5 at FanDuel. Okay, that one I can get behind. I do think that changes everything for sure. We're showing 52% to the over on 3.5. But I actually think that's probably a little low here just because, like you said, we've got a situation here where close game, a little more efficient, and potential for overtime. So I think we could do over 3.5 if you want to. I'm always willing to override the model if you are.
Well, before we jump on it officially, I do
Yeah.
think the model's probably based on his usage throughout the
Mhm.
season. Debo
Yeah,
kind of publicly said he doesn't want to be handed the ball as much coming into the year, all that. If
sure.
there's ever a time to take the chains off and give him more rushes,
Yeah, you
it's the
got to do
Super
it
Bowl.
in the
What are you
Super Bowl.
saving him for? There's no more other time. So that's the one where
Exactly.
I would argue that, we should probably be on the aggressive side of the model more
Mhm.
so than the underside of it. So yeah, 3.5 -113. I'm good with it if you are.
Let's do it. We're going to take as our second bet here on Bet What Happens Live for the Super Bowl. We're going, I wouldn't say against the model because the model does have 52% of the over 3.5 yards, but technically we're not beating the juice per the model, but we also have to put the football knowledge in here. And that's why I have Billy here. That's why we've had Grant Neefer of Scores and Odds with me throughout the season because he's always been willing to trust his gut and trust what he sees and go against the model at times. And it's been really successful. We're up over 23 units this year on Bet What Happens Live. So we're going to lock it in. Debo Samuel over 3.5 rushing yards as our second bet here on Bet What Happens Live. And if you're watching on YouTube, thank you for joining us, first of all. Second of all, make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you're enjoying betting the NFL live one more time this year. And third, drop your questions in the chat. We're happy to take any player prop questions, usually around yardage, interceptions, anytime touchdowns. Those are kind of the best ones that we have models pre-built for. So if you have any questions about player props, drop them in the chat. But in the meantime, until we get to those, Billy, where are we looking next?
I'm seeing one in the chat on Brock Purdy passing yards over or under 222.5. My gut is saying under just because without them starting with the ball and with, higher rush rate for the 49ers, but I'd love to see the model on that one.
Yeah, so the model has 237, but again, not starting with the ball. That's going to knock it down almost exactly 15 yards based off of what I've been calculating
Okay.
throughout the years. So we're literally dead on with what FanDuel has, what DraftKings has out there in the market in terms of the model.
Sure. Yeah. And that one for, whoever is asking that might be worth it to see what Kansas City does here. Obviously,
Mhm.
it's going to be a different result if Kansas City ties it up. The
Yeah.
over might show some value. Whereas if they get stopped right away, we expect a higher rush rate for San Francisco.
Well,
And
okay, so while we're there, let's look at Patrick Mahomes because I have 269 as his live projection, and I see 275.5 out there. But Kansas City starting with the ball, so we want to adjust that up by about 15 yards. So in that case, we're showing a little bit of value to the over, but it's probably not enough for me to want to bet Mahomes is over either. So, these Super Bowl lines are pretty efficient, I would expect. So we're gonna have a hard time, I think, finding player prop value overall, but we'll definitely find something.
real quick on that, if anyone's using ESPN bet, they're a little bit higher on both quarterbacks. So if you liked the under, that would be the place to look. They're about 3 or 4 yards higher. Probably won't matter, but if if Purdy finishes at 225, getting those couple extra yards will be huge. So I'm not saying we're taking that, but if you wanted to look that way, that'd be the way to do it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do see a question in chat before we move on. Marquez Valdez Scantling over 7.5 receiving yards. I am again 51% to the under, 49% to the over. So just a lot of super efficient lines here, I think. And we expect that. This is probably going to be one of the hardest games to bet all year, just because of the amount of volume, attention, everything that has gone into this game. Billy, right now we haven't seen a whole lot of value. Just from kind of watching the game, we've seen a bunch of fumbles. You mentioned it, kind of just a lot of bad luck there. Is there anything in terms of just the game in general? We've seen some drops, like Justin Watson had a big drop there. Is there anything going on with this ball that could, be affecting the way we bet something?
I know. Yeah, we were talking about it off air. I said, did they grease up the ball or something
I
for the
know, I
Super Bowl? It does
know.
look something weird's going on. But no, I don't know. Is it jitters? Is it just we're both math guys. We understand that if something's a low probability, it's not all that crazy when you play nearly 300 football games in a year that one or two of them are going to have some weird stuff go on. So
Exactly.
probably just, some weird variance. But yeah, it has been strange, especially teams that are usually well coached, limited mistakes. You don't expect to see that from these teams, right? Like
Yeah,
there's some
exactly.
teams that you see two fumbles early, you go, yeah, of course they did, but not these
So,
guys.
so here's an interesting one, Billy. I'm going to move over to the anytime touchdown market because I do see a lot of questions about that in chat, and one did pique my interest, and that was Debo Samuel anytime touchdown plus 420. And this is something I talked about on the touchdown show earlier today. If we have a kind of a close game, which I'm going to count this as a close game, it's a one score game. I was going to look at some receiving overs because both teams are expected to pass a little bit more than expectation now, especially for Kansas City. But even San Francisco at this point isn't going to be passing a whole lot more than expectation, especially if it progresses further into the game as a one score game. And right now, I'm showing value on both Brandon Ayuk at plus 460 and Debo Samuel at plus 420 for anytime touchdowns. I actually have Ayuk at plus 350 and Debo at plus 390. So the really big values on Brandon Ayuk for an anytime touchdown, but also have Debo Samuel value anytime touchdown. Curious your thoughts on either of those before we bet them.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring up Debo just on the logic that he's not, I don't want to say he's game script independent because if they go super kill the clock, they're probably not running jet sweeps to Debo Samuel.
Mhm.
But more so than most wide receivers, he might get, some rushing attempts in the red zone, close to the
Yep.
goal line, all that stuff. So really like Debo just because you can feel like he's still going to be a part of the game script unless it gets super crazy. And
Mhm.
yeah, Ayuk at that kind of odds, it's hard to poo-poo anything at those long odds, especially a player as involved as he typically is and hasn't been so far this game. They've drew up plays for him. It's not like he wasn't part of the game plan. They got to be coming at some point.
Yeah, exactly. So, considering you were kind of thinking about Debo, and then I have that pretty big value on Brandon Ayuk, we're gonna bet them both. We're just you just need to hit one of those two to be profitable for a touchdown. So if you have FanDuel, at least that's what I see as the best odds right now. Now, of course, make sure you're shopping around. I can't look at every book at once, but I see 450 at DraftKings, 460 at FanDuel for Brandon Ayuk. We're going to take half a unit on that anytime touchdown. And then Debo Samuel, I see plus 390 at DraftKings, but plus 420 at FanDuel. So we're going to do half a unit plus 420 Debo Samuel anytime touchdown. So top two receivers for the San Francisco 49ers, half a unit each for an anytime touchdown, plus 460 on Brandon Ayuk, plus 420 on Debo Samuel. So, Billy, thoughts maybe on the Kansas City side of the ball now that we took San Francisco's top two receivers?
Yeah, not specifically the Kansas City side of the ball, but I've been watching it since we've started here. The
Mm-hmm.
money line on the Chiefs keeps kind of trickling down. It looks
Mm-hmm.
like pretty much everywhere. Still plus 230 at FanDuel. I almost never bet NFL sides. Like it's
Right.
really hard to beat those. We all know this, especially live. Like this is not, but man, something just that feels too long. Plus 230, less than a 1/3 chance to win this game. And we've got some signals that there's some sharp money coming in on that side. What do you think about actually taking a little money line sprinkle here, Nick?
A little money line sprinkle on the Kansas City Chiefs, and you said at plus 230. I think that's interesting. DraftKings has plus 170, and they have minus 220 on San Francisco. So you could technically arb them, and now it just moved to 220 for Kansas City.
Yeah.
You technically could have arbitraged at FanDuel and DraftKings plus 230 and minus 220 and made a few cents, which isn't really worth it. But I do like Kansas City plus 220 right now. So you want to sprinkle a little on that?
Yeah, and not a super confident bet. So for anyone listening, like this isn't the 10 unit whale
Sure.
play lock of the week or
Exactly.
anything like that. But especially we're thinking it goes to overtime. We're thinking it's going to be close. If Kansas City comes out and scores here, it's going to be close to a coin flip on the money line. If that happens, by the way, and you've taken this
Mhm.
bet, go ahead and hedge right out of it, like or arb out of it, depending on how you want to look at it.
Yeah.
I am not married to this idea. It just feels too long with FanDuel being 40, 50, 60 cents off market, depending on what other book you're looking at.
Yeah, I agree with that. And do see a question in chat here. Justin Watson, 11 to 1, anytime touchdown. I am not on that. The Kansas City receivers, aside from Rashee Rice, are very hit or miss, right? They're almost like just secondary, even tertiary parts of this offense. And we're not showing value on any of the receivers. Even Rashee Rice, I have it 3-1 as fair value for an anytime touchdown in the second half here. And I see plus 260 at FanDuel, and I see plus 240 at DraftKings. So not even showing value on Rashee Rice, which surprised me a little bit. If I look at Travis Kelce, he's certainly going to be juiced down. I see plus 195 at DraftKings, plus 185 at FanDuel. We're plus 240 as fair odds on Travis Kelce. So no anytime touchdown value, it looks like, on the Kansas City receivers. If I look at Isaiah Pacheco, it's close. FanDuel was plus 240. And I have plus 250. So if you want to gamble, you could go Pacheco, but I'm not willing to make a bet that's going against my model on the touchdown market. Yeah. One market I do want to look at that we often talk about is the interception props. And I know so far we've seen 0 interceptions, but there's a case to be made that Brock Purdy's interception line was a little too high because of some recent poor luck. Because, like, you remember, he started the year with like almost no interceptions the first handful of games. And then recently his interception rate has crept up. So we may be at a spot where taking his under on interceptions could be good, but I am not seeing value on the under, nor am I seeing value on the over, right? So I have Brock Purdy to throw an interception plus minus 280. If you had anything longer than plus 280, we'd be showing value, or anything shorter than minus 280, so like minus 200 or minus 220. But unfortunately, I don't see value on Brock Purdy. If I look at Mahomes, I am showing some value to his under on interceptions. I have 2-1, actually 2.1-1, minus 210 as fair value. And I see a minus 180 at FanDuel. Trying to click over here to DraftKings to see if I can grab his line.
175 at DraftKings.
175, yeah, at DraftKings for an interception. So I'm not opposed to it. I'm rooting for Charvarius Ward to have an interception, which means he would pick off Patrick Mahomes, but I have that at 10-1. So I don't mind a little hedge of a minus 175 bet on Patrick Mahomes to not throw an interception. And that way I win either bet. So personally, I'm taking it. And my model's showing value on it. So I'm going to take Patrick Mahomes minus 175 at DraftKings to not throw an interception in this game over at DraftKings. I'm going to bet 1.75 to win 1 unit. So got a few bets here. We got some. Go ahead.
We're seeing enough trick plays here, and it's the Super Bowl. There's always trick plays. You could get an interception from somebody else. Maybe he'll pick off Travis Kelce or Rashee Rice on an end around reverse pass or something like that. You could win both, Nick. Don't give up hope.
Exactly. Yeah, there are ways to win both. I see a question in chat. McCaffrey over 141.5 total yards. I'm right in line with that. Kittle under 1.5 receptions at even money. Let me take a look over here at that. For the rest of the game, I have George Kittle receptions at 2.0. Now that's average, so his median it's going to be a little bit lower than that, around 1.7, 1.8. So I don't think I would take under 1.5 at plus 100. I'd need even more positive juice on George Kittle under 1.5 receptions. Billy, where else are you looking?
Real quick to that one, if Kansas City comes out and gets stopped, especially if, deep in their own territory, or San Francisco gets a defensive touchdown, and you can jump on that George Kittle line after you already know that Kansas City hasn't scored here, I would guess there'd be some value in Nick's model on that. And there's not really any upside in taking it now, because if Kansas City ties it up, then we're definitely going to lean towards the over. So that's one. If you like that angle, try to pick off a still line here with a stop, something like that, rather than jump on it now and potentially get burned with it going against you.
Here's one. So we haven't really taken any Kansas City Chiefs anytime touchdown bets because I was saying their receivers, I wasn't really showing any value, but I am thinking about their second tight end here and their third tight end here. Noah Gray. I'm looking around trying to find Noah Gray. I see 15-1 at FanDuel, and Blake Bell, I see 45-1 at FanDuel for an anytime touchdown. Now, we don't quite have fair odds on Blake Bell, but Noah Gray, I have 13-1, and FanDuel is offering 15-1. So we're showing a little bit of value here on Noah Gray to have an anytime touchdown. And you mentioned, trick plays, just getting other guys involved, working up certain things. I think I'm going to sprinkle a little on Noah Gray. What are your thoughts here?
What was the best line you said on either of those two you saw?
15 to 1 on FanDuel is what I'm seeing.
For who? Which one?
For Noah Gray.
And then what was the best you saw on Blake Bell?
I saw 45 at FanDuel. I'm
Okay.
clicking over to DraftKings here real quick.
No, I was just checking ESPN against some of those because it was 25 on Blake Bell, which I thought was high, but I don't see how you don't put like
There's
point 1 unit
55 to 1 at DraftKings, but again, I'm right at 55 to 1, so not showing value on Blake Bell. But Noah Gray definitely interests me at 15 to 1. So like I said, I was just curious your thoughts
Yeah.
on him.
No, and Kelsey doesn't seem all the way right. I don't know what that means, but we've seen very inconsistent appearances from Travis Kelsey. It could just be that the 49ers linebackers are selling out to stop him. Maybe he's used more as a decoy. I think you can tell yourself a story on secondary.
Plus, we have that Dre Greenlaw injury, which yes. I think helps that as well. You could potentially see more 12 or even 13 personnel from Kansas City here because of the Dre Greenlaw injury. So we're going to do it. We're going to sprinkle a 10th of a unit on Noah Gray anytime touchdown. 15 to 1 at FanDuel. I'm showing 13 to 1 as fair odds. So if you have anything longer than that available to you, I'd go ahead and bet that. If you find even better than 15 to 1, that's great. But as far as I'm seeing, 15 to 1 at FanDuel looks like the best here. So
it doesn't seem like Patrick Mahomes really wants to throw to anyone other than Rashee Rice, wide receiver wise. And you can only check down to Pacheco so many times, especially if you're chasing points late. It's got to go somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. So if San Francisco's selling out to stop Rashee Rice and or Travis Kelsey, I think that's a really sharp call. Like he's got to throw it to somebody. He's only going to tolerate so many drops from Justin Watson, MVS, Kadarius Toney, et cetera, forever. So it's got to be someone, right?
Yep, it has. Somebody's got to score if they are going to score. So Billy, any other thoughts here? Obviously, we've looked at a couple of anytime touchdowns. We took an interception under on Mahomes. We've had a couple of yardage props. We took the Deebo Samuel over on his receiving yards. We took the live over. We took a Kansas City money line. Where are we looking next? I mean, we still got. I'm looking over here. I still see Usher performing, so we got plenty of time.
Yeah, it's tough. There's so many live markets that we don't always have. Yeah. In this one. Exactly. One I do want to look at is the MVP market. I'm trying to find. Can you find live MVP or is this?
Yeah, there is live MVP. FanDuel has they had it earlier. Yeah, here it is. Live MVP.
What category is that under? Because I want to check some of these.
It's just under their popular bets, and then it's like the second tab down.
So this is kind of a hedge on Kansas City catching up. It's a hedge on the over. If this game really finishes 10-3, you have to imagine it's not a quarterback that wins the MVP, or even if it finishes 13-3 or something tight like that. Like, how do you
Brock Purdy didn't throw the touchdown. Exactly.
Right, and I'm not suggesting that I know exactly who it's going to be, but I think it's worth looking at some defensive options here, some alternate offensive players. What are your thoughts in terms of just who you would look at before we start looking at the lines and trying to figure out who that might be?
Yeah, I mean, Jake Moody's already set the NFL record for the longest field goal. If Kansas City ties it and then he hits another 58-yarder to win it, he's 120 to 1 live. That wouldn't be surprising. Now, obviously, McCaffrey's the obvious non-quarterback choice. He's plus 160 right now at FanDuel. I don't think I really want to bet that because I don't think that's super value, but certainly as a hedge to Kansas City, you could essentially take San Francisco money line on McCaffrey plus 160 if you think he's going to win the MVP.
Yeah, he's not having the kind of performance.
He fumbled right off the bat,
Yeah, and he's got 33 rushing yards, 40 some passing. He's not having a bad game by any stretch, but
certainly
for his lines to have dropped from pregame, I don't understand how we can justify that when he's got a turnover and all that. But yeah, I mean, I hate, but I love that Moody call because 120 to 1, man. You can't ever call
so wrong. It's so wrong. But this is the Super Bowl. I'm gonna go Jake Moody, 120 to 1 for the live MVP. San Francisco 49ers kicker. I mean, we're getting 120 to 1 on a guy who just set an NFL record in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and you made a great point. Imagine it's tied and he hits another one 50-yard, or it goes to overtime and he hits a clutch kick. Like there's a lot of scenarios
It's
with the way
disgusting.
this game has played out where he makes the most impactful play, right?
Yeah.
He's the play that we're all talking about on Monday at work.
I'm in for a tenth of a unit. I'm in
Yeah.
120 to 1. Jake Moody, live Super Bowl MVP. Uh I I'm just gonna do it. It's the Super Bowl. I'm having a little fun. I don't know if this is a plus EV bet. I try to, use my model and give you all guys plus EV bets, let you know what the model says as fair value, etc. That's why we're up. But um sometimes you just got to go off your gut. And I think 120 to 1 could potentially be some value on Jake Moody. Any other thoughts like you mentioned around this MVP market? What if Kansas City wins?
Yeah, if Kansas City wins, you'd have to imagine it's going to be Mahomes, right? Like I don't see how. I shouldn't say I don't see how. It seems very unlikely that they come back and win this game without it being like clutch prime Patrick
Mhm.
Mahomes. We're all talking about him. Obviously, the line on that's not going to be all that strong. I don't think. I'm
Yeah.
not seeing it. It might be a state by state thing. I don't think I have that market here. But what's the line on Mahomes right now?
So real quick, 150 to 1 on DraftKings for Jake Moody, MVP. So even better, make sure you're shopping around. I jumped the gun a little there on 120 to 1. That's what I got it. But if you have 150 to 1, certainly take that. But go ahead. I already forgot what you were saying.
No, just what's the line on Mahomes that you're saying? I cannot find
Oh,
these
right,
here.
right.
I don't know if it's
Super Bowl MVP for Mahomes, I have plus 230 at DraftKings, plus 240 at FanDuel, which is essentially the Kansas City money line, right? Like,
yeah, that's I don't why would you bet that if it's
yeah.
not considerably better than because there's a scenario, right? Like Pacheco
Mhm.
takes over in the second half. There's a pick six from Kansas City. Travis Kelsey just dominate. Like there's a lot more scenarios where somebody else gets it than there are that Mahomes gets it without winning, right? Like that's almost
Yeah.
impossible.
Oh, yeah, exactly. This might be the perfect game if it stays like this weirdly low scoring, fumbly, whatever kind of game where would we ever see again losing team MVP?
It would have
It's
I
been a
would
long
be
time,
more
but it's happened before.
I know it's happened. I would be more inclined to say that if there was like a standout performer from either team that you felt
Hmm.
like had really cemented
Yeah.
it, like does McCaffrey go crazy, but then somehow Kansas
But
City
nobody
comes back?
stood out.
Get
So
that?
it doesn't make me lean towards like you said, a losing team MVP because if nobody stands out, you just give it to somebody from the winning team. You really,
And
like
you
you
give it
said,
to
you
the
need a
quarterback
standout
from the winning
performance.
team.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That's just the default. We have to that's the null hypothesis here. We have
Hmm.
to prove against it being the quarterback, not. But honestly, just the way this game's playing, imagine it stays 10-3, 13-3, 13-6, something like that. Anyone on defense you like from either team? Because I'm looking at the stats right now, kind of spread out, especially on the San Fran side. Like, two different guys have sacks, two different guys have forced fumbles, somebody entirely different has a fumble recovery. There hasn't been like a player that stands out.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts
Yeah,
defensively?
I mean, if you just look at volume, right? Like Fred Warner has 6 tackles, but only 3 solo. Jair Brown, 5 and 4. There hasn't really been a standout player. Chase Young has that sack and 2 quarterback hits. Um, it's tough to say. Like it could be somebody who changes the game in the second half, you know? So it's tough to say right now on the San Francisco side, like what defensive player I would take for an MVP bet. I do want to circle back. Chat here has a question on Travis Kelsey over 39 and a half receiving yards. I've said this all show. 51-49. 51% to the under, 49% to the over on our model here for Travis Kelsey, 39 and a half receiving yards. And I'm not willing to go against that. Super efficient market and not showing value there. So,
That's another one to whoever asked that. If you really want to bet that, either
mhm,
direction, I don't care which,
mhm,
see how this first drive is going. You can probably catch a slightly stale line. That's going to be the time to do it.
yes.
It's not right now when the books have had 30 minutes to sit here and figure it
Mhm,
out and work it out. If it comes out, it looks like Kansas City's going to score, especially if they throw one to him and it jumps, hit that under. If it looks like Kansas City's getting stopped and it's going to go back to San Francisco, maybe that's the time to take the over because they're going to knock it down a little bit if he doesn't get any in this drive and then Kansas City's going to come out throwing more heavily. So I think there's
exactly.
a lot of these that are 51-49 that
Yeah.
if you can just be a little bit quicker than the books in making that adjustment as it comes out, that's
Yep.
probably going to be where your edge is, not betting it while the game is still stopped.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. And while we're at it, I'm going to look at the other tight end here, George Kittle, and see what his receiving prop line is. Looks like 17 and a half at FanDuel. 56% to the over on George Kittle, but San Francisco does not start with the ball. So again, another spot where mentally we want to adjust that down. So probably closer to 50-50. But I don't hate that. If Kansas City comes out and scores, this is a spot we may want to, like you said, if Kansas City puts together a little drive here, opening the second half, George Kittle in the middle of that first Kansas City drive, taking his live over on yardage is probably going to be a good spot because the model is showing it likes the over. It certainly is leaning that way. But San Francisco doesn't have the ball. But if Kansas City starts driving, what's going to happen is the probability that they come back becomes greater, which means the probability that San Francisco has to throw the ball more later becomes greater. So we're going to show even more value on Kittle's over. So it's honestly a spot where I don't hate taking it now. But I think maybe waiting a few plays into this first drive might make the most sense.
I agree with that, but I wouldn't wait until we've already seen Kansas City score. You're gonna kind of have to roll the dice a little bit here.
Yeah, exactly. I'm saying middle of the
Do they
drive.
look
Like if
good? Are they
have
moving?
they gotten a first down or two? At that point, you're going to want to take the over because it's increased Kansas City's probability of scoring, which means it's increased San Francisco's probability they'll need to keep throwing. And so I agree with you. You can't wait till Kansas City scores. You gotta see if they look like they're driving.
And then other one, so obviously we can't bet this. So you'll see why in a minute. Waiting for any of these books to post a Kyle Juszczyk rushing and receiving yards. They have it. It's grayed out. Would love to hear what the model has on that because he's been more involved. You know, he's got an 18-yard catch. I've been saying all week. I took him in our anytime touchdown draft. What are you saving Kyle Juszczyk for if not the Super Bowl? Like this is when you bust out the juice. You know they've got plays for him. You know they've got plays for every scenario for Kyle Juszczyk in a Kyle Shanahan offense. I wouldn't be surprised if there's at least one more. Where do we have anything? Is he even in the models? You know, where are we at on that?
Yeah, we have a Kyle Juszczyk model. Our model, so right now, like you said, he has 18 receiving yards. Our model for the rest of game has him with a median of 2.5. So if I pop that into here, I see an 18.5 at DraftKings. I'm showing not enough value, right? So it's 18.5, but plus 165 to the over and minus 215 to the under. And I shouldn't say his median. I should say his mean is 2.5. His median, though, of course, is 0. So I'm showing 65% to the under. So I'm literally right in line with what DraftKings has. I'm in between their minus 215 and their plus 165.
And that's just receiving, right? I was really hoping someone would put the rushing plus receiving because maybe they give him a hand. You know, there's a lot of ways to get Kyle Juszczyk the ball.
Exactly. So Billy, we have kicked off the second half here. The second half kickoff went for a touchback in case that is of interest to any bettors out there. Let's hang on maybe for a couple plays in this drive and see if we want to take that Kittle over or any other spots that come up on this first drive. But my big one would be like, will George Kittle's over be the play here in terms of his receiving yards? Because I really like that potential possibility. We just need to see what Kansas City is going to do here as Pacheco fumbles the ball. What is going on here? He recovers his own fumble, but that is second down and long now, and I don't think I want to take that Kittle over anymore.
At least not right now. We might have some time. You know, they could figure this out, but that is
that's
I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I don't know.
That looks like that was more Mahomes.
That was certainly behind him. But it's definitely been a game of the dropsies on both the rushing and receiving side of things. So we'll have to see what Kansas City does on this second play here. But that definitely was not an ideal start for the Chiefs coming out of halftime.
And given how bad the ball security is, I don't know why you call that shovel pass pit. Like, I get it. I know it's in the playbook, but
we have to watch this third down play. So Mahomes complete to Noah Gray over the middle. We have to watch this third down play. If they convert it here, I will take George Kittle. If not, we'll probably just end it there on Bet What Happens Live on what we already have. But that was Noah Gray. So just a little mental note there. Noah Gray getting involved. We'll have to
wrong
see
side of the field, but it's a good sign.
Exactly. It is a positive sign for that anytime touchdown bet. So just watching this third down play here, and then we'll wrap it up on Bet What Happens Live. Either way. And Mahomes is picked. Who was it? It was not Charvarius Ward. So we just lost the Mahomes bet as a brutal way to wrap up Bet What Happens Live for the season. But hey, that's the NFL. That's betting football. Any last thoughts before we sign off, Billy?
If you wanted, I still haven't seen who that was yet because I'm trying to watch it, but might be an MVP candidate right there. Might be enough in the way this game's going.
Yeah, that's a great point. So it was Brown. So I'm trying to click over here and see if we have any MVP bets on Mr. Jair Brown. He's down to 32-1 immediately at FanDuel. So I don't think we can bet that.
Never mind.
But anyway, that'll do it for Bet What Happens Live for the Super Bowl. We got a whole bunch of bets in there. Want to thank all of you for joining us throughout the season one more time. Even though we lost that Mahomes bet, give us a like if you enjoyed betting with us throughout the whole season. We've had over 20 units this year. Billy, thank you for joining us. I know, you're one of the crew that does this, and I want to thank Tito and Hutton for producing these shows all year. Got to give a big hand to our producers. So for the last time this year, but we'll be doing it again next year. Thanks for watching Bet What Happens Live, everybody. Good luck with your bets, everyone, and enjoy the rest of the Super Bowl.